Yeah, let's get a timer started so I know how long I've been talking. So, quick introduction. I am Dark-Aries, also known as the person who generally gets little sleep during this event, which actually has... I've been actually getting some sleep, for those wondering this year.
1 second, I don't know if there's any sound being captured.
No, big mixer should be on there.
I don't see it.
Then
it
you deleted it. Audio input,
Which one?
big mixer.
Oh, it was me. It was hidden.
Oh,
1 second.
we good?
I don't know why it got hidden.
That's weird. Are we actually good now? Can chat hear me? Press 1 if you can hear me in chat. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
You know what's an easier thing to do? You should have your Twitch stream open. Can you hear yourself?
Based Yiffer. Thank you, Yiffer. I appreciate you.
Well, it's about a 15 second.
So, alright. We'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
Quick introduction. I am Dark-Aries, also known as the 12-year-old who's always here. Also known as the guy who gets very little sleep around here. Also known as the tech guy here. So, officially, I am the technical director of NASA Marathon, meaning I deal with everything technical. I did come a bit pre-planned. I have different notes in my little notebook here that I've taken specifically for the panel. If chat does have any questions, just do an @NASA Marathon with them, and I will get to them at the end. So it's a little bit like a no major opinions episode, but I figure I'll first start by talking a bit about the tech history of NASA Marathon. So when it first started in 2016 in Chicago, or at least in the Chicago area, it started off pretty jank. A lot of the equipment was Nagloria had, but it was on the cheaper side, and it was also parts that ESA pretty much lent. So there was some nice parts. There was some nice pieces of equipment like the Rode lav microphones, which Nagloria forgot the screw mount to XLR connectors. Another thing that was going on was the mixer was fairly cheap. It was just like a passive USB mixer from Monoprice. The video splitters, one of them, the component one didn't have the correct power supply, so everything had to be compositor S video. The scalers were not that great. If literally had grounding issues, you could see it in the video. There was waviness and everything. At one point at night, I literally just kind of ripped half of the setup out because I brought some gear, just because I figured I would help out. So I replaced the scalers with my own scaler, which was the DVDO iScan. Pretty decent unit, not the greatest, but it's a good start. And rewired some things and everything like that. And the quality immensely improved relative to what it was earlier. And then I got asked to be part of NASA staff after that, so that's kind of cool. The next event that we did was NASA DreamHack, and that was pretty decent. Learning a lot from NASA 1. I'm saying a lot, but I'm really tired because I've been up since 9 a.m., actually 8 a.m. technically speaking, so bear with me a little bit. Realizing that the biggest issue when it comes to doing an event or anything like that is really the splitters. So what I did was I invested in a Crosspoint, or an Extron Crosspoint. Specifically the one that we're using right now is an Extron Crosspoint Ultra 128, meaning that it takes 12 inputs and 8 outputs, which is fairly useful in a marathon setting like this. We literally just did a 4-way Jet Set Radio race, Jet Set Radio Future race. So that becomes very useful when you can actually take 4 inputs and split them, one to a TV and then one to a capture card. And that helped out a lot during NASA DreamHack. Instead of using just like little crappy splitters, everything was kind of useful. The problem with that event was that I didn't get the Crosspoint until like a week before the event, essentially, due to some back-end logistical issues that I'm not going to go into. but I basically had to figure out tech within the last 2 weeks of the event. So while we did get a nice piece of equipment like that crosspoint, there was the issue of that only I knew how to use it, which kind of persists to this day. There's whenever an upgrade happens, generally I'm the only person who knows how to do it until I get a chance to teach somebody, but we'll go on that in a bit. Another important lesson from DreamHack Montreal was that we learned that you cannot rely on external capture cards. If there's one thing that if you want to do a marathon or event or anything like that, I strongly urge you to not use external capture cards. The main reason being, if you're using one, that's fine, but oftentimes you want to save on setup time, so you're going to want a second one to be able to flip-flop between the two, save on setup time. Maybe you have a camera that's nicer than a webcam that you'd like to use or anything like that. And it's very easy to fill up the bandwidth on USB when you start dealing in high-definition video, mainly in 1080p at 60 frames a second. So we ended up running into that issue at DreamHack where we had just so many things plugged into the USB. I think what happened was I plugged in my phone to charge, and it literally caused all the devices to crash, and it was only pulling power. So do not rely on external capture cards. If you are better off getting a internal card for any event planning that you are trying to do. Keep like a GVUSB or a Dazzler or something as a backup in case things fail, but you should not use it as your main workhorse for an event, and that's what we learned at DreamHack Montreal. The next big thing that we did was NASA 2, and this is really where a lot of the big upgrades from, if you watch a NASA 1 VOD and you watch a NASA 2 VOD, you'll notice the bump in video quality is very significant. It's honestly quite drastic because we went from capturing composite in his video and going on to component and RGB for most consoles and keeping things to HDMI as well. We had an HDMI modded N64 that I did. I later sold at the event to Bing Cheng, but I specifically pre-ordered the Ultra HDMI kit. I modded into an N64 specifically for the event because I knew that we had N64 races, and the HDMI output is fairly useful. So if you compare the two events, there was a drastic increase in video quality. We also had 2 open source scan converters in use. One got killed during the Wario's Woods race. An important note is to label your power supplies for different devices, because if you do not, you will very likely mix them up and damage and kill your equipment like I did. So that's a second pro tip right there. The one thing that we did figure out, though, was we had, at that point, 2 data path capture cards, which people might kind of know what they are. They're very expensive professional-level capture cards meant for capturing VGA and DVI, but they can actually also handle component video and RGB video from retro consoles. And we had 2 of them in use, but the thing is they take up 4 PCIe lanes, and most computers cannot actually handle that. So we ended up actually bottlenecking the computer to only 2 inputs. So an extra input that we had for anything extra was an external AverMedia card, actually provided by Bing Cheng as well. He bought it literally just to play around with, but we ended up using it for the event because working only on 2 captures is not all that fun. So if you are planning on doing an event, another thing to take note is making sure that you have a desktop that is capable of actually handling multiple capture cards. Because again, if you only have one, you're constantly swapping everything around and you're killing a lot of time on setup, which if it's maybe a smaller event and you're okay with that, it's good. On a larger scale, it's definitely where a lot of time is wasted, is swapping things around. The audio that we had was also significantly different. NASA 1, we just had a handheld microphone, just like a wired Shure SM58, and the Rode lav microphone, which kind of constrained what people could hear, because obviously there's only 2 audio sources. NASA 2, we bought 4 kind of cheap Chinese clone of an Audio-Technica lav mics. Can I get water, actually? I'm talking a lot. Holy crap. And they ran on weird coin batteries, which actually died. And it caused a delay for a Genesis run. I believe it was Stereos, where we literally couldn't have any audio going because there was no batteries in them. So that's also a thing. Make sure that if you are going for anything on a battery, to have actual spare batteries.
Oh, I'm going to get you a bottle.
Thank you, Hydration Bot. The reason that the lav microphones actually do have batteries is because the way the microphone works is it needs electricity. So if they aren't working off the power on the board, then they need a separate source of power. The microphones that you actually use in like a gamer's headset, they work off of the 5 volts from the sound card. It's called built-in power or anything like that. That doesn't exist on most soundboards. What exists instead is phantom power, which is 48 volts. So if you try feeding a 48 volts to a 5 volt headset, you're probably going to kill it. Sorry. So that was kind of like the significant upgrades of NASA 2. All right. NASA 3, which is where we are today. There was actually a lot of upgrades on the back end that I didn't think we'd actually do, but we did. We solved the bottleneck of the capture cards by I built a brand new server, which I've dubbed Artemis because I like Greek mythology, and I figured also naming it after a Greek goddess of the moon is kind of fitting for NASA. But it is a dual Xeon server. It actually has 2 Xeon CPUs in them, specifically the E5-2680 version 2s, which gives us 20 cores, I think, where they cap out at a 3.10 gigahertz when they turbo. It also gives a ton of PCI Express lanes. There's actually 6 8-time slots in that computer. We literally have it filled with 5 capture cards on a graphics card right now, which gave us 5 data path inputs total, which is why the Jet Set Radio Future setup took quite a bit, because if you have 5 inputs, 2 of them are on computers, 2 of them are on cameras, and 1 was an analog, it requires a bit of rewiring and making sure that everything's all good. Also, Jabro said he would take the blame for it. They did not all remember to bring their component cables, so I had to figure out a system to get 2 worlds working on composite, which, for the record, the solution is actually feeding it to a DVD recorder that I have. Another pro tip that I will give you is that if you're looking for a decent source to try to get composite and S-video or even RF to components so you can capture it with any component to HDMI if you only have an HDMI capture card, or just regular component if you have a component capture card. This is kind of how we did DreamHack, actually, for the older sources as well. But a DVD recorder is actually, if you can get one for decent money, it is very worth the purchase, because it takes in 240p. It'll convert it to 480i, but most speedrunners know, or at least if you don't, if you have 480i video, and if you take 240p video, you kind of have a video like this. It's like this, and 60 frames a second. The 480i means you're only getting half each time, but it's double the size. So if you split that back into this, you all of a sudden have 60 frames again. So it's very easy to get very good capture quality from that in any modern capture card, or even playing it on a flat screen TV if you don't have a tube TV. It's a decent solution for in between. So that's how that's why the JSRF run actually had delays. Also making sure that we had audio going and all that stuff. Another upgrade that we had is I actually invested, and you'll hear this a lot because most of the tech setup actually comes out of my own pockets and other staff's pockets. We buy equipment out of our own pockets to make this event actually happen. So I actually bought, on a whim, audio to Cat 6 converters. So that way we can get fairly long audio runs. And it actually worked out really nicely. We have run going from the soundboard all the way over there. If you look, there's this white table. It continues and goes to a mixer. And where the PC and console and HC console runs all the way over there, it's over, I think it's 20 feet, 25 feet. And the cat cable runs perfect. There's no buzzing in the audio or anything like that. So I highly do recommend, if you need longer runs, to invest in them. They're not very expensive in total, and it looks pretty nice. You can even color code them to make things easier. So that was another upgrade that we did. It was on the smaller side, but it's still, I thought it would be nice to mention. Another thing that we did, if people watching from the very start have noticed, is that we now have 2 broadcast headsets. We've joined the big leagues. I bought a Sennheiser HMD 280, and Lurk bought the Audio-Technica BPHS1, which most people know as the headsets that GDQ and ESA use. Honestly, comparing the two, they sound pretty much identical. The Sennheiser, I think, sounds a bit more flat, meaning that it doesn't really color the audio in any way, shape, or form. But the Sennheiser is also more expensive. Both me and Lurk bought our headsets on eBay. We bought them used. Mine came used but new, but in the box with the manual and everything. I believe Lurk's just didn't come with the box, but it came with everything else. They came around to the same price. I think I paid 125 or 150 Canadian for mine. And Lurk paid something like 100 American for his. So buying it used definitely saves. If you're looking for broadcast headsets, just set a search on both of those models and see what happens. You can also buy new, but obviously not everybody can afford new. But if you are debating on which one to get, honestly, both are good. The Audio-Technica ones, everybody has been replacing their ear cups, though. Actually, I can show. These are not the original ear cups that come with them. These are the brainwave replacements that ESA uses. I don't know if GDQ uses them, but ESA definitely uses them. They've actually, you'll notice that they've color-coded the headsets. So they'll have like a yellow and a white and a red. Obviously makes it very easy to know who is on which one. So they're a lot comfier, they're a lot bigger. On the Sennheisers, that's not needed. The ear cups are perfectly comfortable. So it's, but these are not expensive. I think they're about 10 American or 15 or 20. It's overall not very expensive. One of the things, I'll actually get to more about the headsets later, but they sound very good. Obviously, people can listen to the game audio in them. Another thing with the audio is actually this microphone that I'm using right now. It is a, it's just a regular Shure Podium microphone, but it has a hypercardioid pickup pattern, which essentially means that the pickup pattern is literally like this. It's very narrow, so it'll only pick up like this, essentially, to the couch. So in runs, you notice that the couch doesn't really need any extra sort of microphones or anything like that, even though there's a crowd in the room during large runs. The Mafia thing that we had ongoing during the hit and run, That was just two of these podium microphones on the table, and it picked up mostly pretty good. In that situation, probably hypercardioid is not ideal because the back of that U shape kind of got cut off. But overall, I think the audio, just for being able to sit on a couch and being able to talk, and the rest of the couch can talk as well, definitely works out fairly well. And if you're looking to do anything like that, that's an option. One of the things, another major upgrade that we have this year is that it's not all of them, but most of the VODs are actually being recorded in 1440p quality. And there's some hiccups, but most VODs, I'm hoping, also have a game-only audio track saved to it as well. And this is actually achieved with a double mixer setup. So we have a big mixer, which is specifically an Allen & Heath Z24. We're not using all the channels, but you know, if you're gonna rent or borrow a mixing like a mixer, you might as well go bigger. Generally, the price is about the same. For DreamHack, we actually did rent a mixer. It was very much worth it. It costed about $20 or $25 to rent for a week. At that price, if you want to do something to try out, you're better off renting it for $25 and being able to pull off a weekend event instead of dropping a couple hundred and maybe not liking it. So we have that big mixer, and it goes the game audio only. It comes out from the mixer, from its auxiliary output into the smaller one, which is my personal mixer that I bought. It's an Allen & Heath ZI-10, and it actually has 4 microphone inputs that come in through USB. So it's 4 in and 4 out. Unfortunately, I don't really have a way of using all 4 inputs, but 2 of them have been used to capture the game audio only. For the complainers of the Mafia and Simpsons combination, I actually split the audio in 2, where you either will get Simpsons Hit and Run on one audio track, or you'll get the Mafia game on the other, which I think will also be kind of cool. The regular ones that will be going on YouTube on a daily basis will just have the regular stream audio, and there will be a distribution, probably a torrent, and I was thinking probably doing it at a pay what you want model, where if you want the VODs for free, go for it. If you want to chip in something, that's cool too, but I don't care either way. Just, you know, because it costs money to hold the VODs somewhere to get an initial seed going on a torrent. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know if any other marathon is recording in 1440p. That leads to its own issues, but I will get to that in a bit. And the last major upgrade for NASA 3 is a Xiaomi, which is a Chinese older action cam. It outputs 1080. It can record 1080p 60. I think it can record actually 21, like above 1080. But its HDMI output is 1080i. And we have a GoPro, which is being used right now, and it does 1080p output. And that is a significant quality increase from even that standard workhorse Logitech webcam. They generally have larger sensors, and they deal with low light a lot better. So this year there's been a lot of fidelity improvements to the stream. I can't think of any other event that kind of jumps so drastically in quality like NASA. ESA is probably up there, but they've also they've been more, I think they're more of like a constant. When you look at NASA and it's like really low, and then it jumps, and then it just jumps up again. So we're a bit of more of a staircase, while something like ESAs, they're constantly improving, but it's at like a constant rate. So I can't really comment on GDQ setup because I don't know much more about it. But if anybody wants to talk about that, definitely hit me up. So the next, and the last thing that we have is actually projectors. There was a complaint for NASA 2 and NASA 1 that it's really hard to see what is going on. And this year we managed to borrow two projectors actually, one for the stream room and one for the casual room, so people can actually see. Renting a projector can maybe be a bit pricey. You might be better off buying your own. In this case, I was able to borrow two from somebody I know. But otherwise, if you're looking to maybe buy a cheaper one, then Epson is actually a fairly good brand to get into. Everybody I know, because I actually work as an AV technician as well. That is my job now. I have a job as an AV technician for a company. And Epson for consumer stuff is all good. You will not be disappointed. Just need another sip of water here. And again, if you have any questions that you want me to go over, just ping them to @NASA Marathon, and I'll get to them at the end of this. Perfect. Thank you, those crazy guys. So, next, what I've written down here is some drawbacks to everything technical kind of here at NASA. And probably the first major drawback is that a lot of the a lot of the knowledge is within myself, unfortunately. Often what I'll be doing is I'm actually constantly researching technical stuff all the time, either during work or at home. I'm always trying out things, investing in things like the HD retrovision cables, like those CAT adapters. I'm always trying to figure stuff out of improving. If there's a console mod, that's like one of the few times I'll stream myself trying to mod it and get it working. But the problem is nobody else can really help. There's those crazy guys, for example, is learning. He's learned quite a bit of a setup over the past, 3 NASAs. But if it were to come to like this race setup, nobody would have been able to set up but me, because nobody is really in tune with the setup. It also helps that the NASA setup is very modular, and it's also essentially my home setup. Like the Extron Crosspoint, I use it at home. Like I now have a mixer at home. The data paths I have at home. The Xiaomi I have at home. So like the way that I plan out the setup for the marathon in my head, everything is very modular because the equipment is always shared. Like I own a DataPath E2S. Those crazy guys owns my old DataPath E1. Lurk and Dark Fox both own DataPath E1S. So that's where our 4 capture cards come in. And that's why my computer that I built, literally finished building about 2 weeks before the event, can handle all those capture cards. But a lot of retro capture and everything like that, because those capture cards are essentially an OSSC. To kind of dumb it down, everybody thinks of, the OSSC, it's like pixel perfect, it looks amazing. These capture cards work on the same principle as an OSSC. It takes the video, it can fine-tune it to like the specifics of the signal, and you get that capture. That's why things like the SNES, that was direct capture into the data path. PS1, that was direct capture. GameCube, direct capture. Wii was direct capture. The computers are actually going through it too. But a drawback of those cards is that they're DVI capture cards, so they don't capture any audio, which really, in a situation like this, doesn't matter because we feed everything through the mixer anyways. But in a home situation, that's kind of crappy because you can't capture HDMI audio from your consoles. But there's also devices where if they don't see specifically as an HDMI device, they're not going to spit out any video, or they won't spit out their full resolution. Like both of the cameras, because they don't detect HDMI, they detect DVI, they only spit out 480p. So we've invested actually in these little HDMI dongles, which trick, they edit kind of like the display, what's detected. So instead of it showing as DVI, it shows as a 4K 60 HDMI monitor, and that's how we get the full resolution out of these cameras. But it's a little bit of an investment. But yeah, everybody who helps with the tech, they only know little aspects of it. So at some point, I was actually joking with those crazy guys, at some point Lurk and him could probably combine to be like part of myself knowledge-wise. Because there was a bit of a delay last night with the setup where an audio cable was not routed properly. And I put my phone on silent, so I wasn't able to be woken up. But eventually those crazy guys did figure it out. It just probably took them a lot longer than if I would have gotten it fixed, because I know immediately, oh, this is what I probably need to think for. For him, he had to go through a bunch of different steps to come to that conclusion. So it's just, and there's really no other way to try to teach somebody but being at this event. It's not, we don't necessarily have powwows like ESA do, which are awesome, by the way. To just kind of like group together, go through the equipment, kind of learn everything, test out new stuff. It would definitely be awesome to do, but currently it's just not feasible. And another thing as well is that we really just have not a lot of manpower. Essentially for this whole event, I've been at the tech station from 8 to 9-ish a.m. till about midnight, if not later. I've been at the tech station trying to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So, yeah, this event is fairly low on manpower. But again, that's kind of, it's hard to get more manpower when there's so much to teach. So, it's just one of those things. There's also no tutorials or anything like that. I'm trying to get some tutorials done. I've been saying this for like 2 years now, but I'm actually in the process of trying to create YouTube videos that kind of go over streaming from the ground up, and then it'll start from like the very basics and then going into a more complicated setup like we do. Another thing is that when it comes to the setup itself here, there's parts that have to be, some people call it bomb proofing or dummy proofing or anything like that. Like one example is to be able to do the 1440p recordings. I've never, side note, I've never hated OBS as much as I have in the past week or two. Because the way that OBS works is that you have your canvas scale, which I've set to, originally I was trying to do 4K, but that is just completely not feasible, as it's too cumbersome. But 1440p, and then you think, okay, in the recording options, I'll just tick, in the streaming options, I'll just tick off rescale to 720p, record in the original 1440p, and things will be good. Turns out that's not the case, because OBS uses bilinear filtering when it does its downscale. If you don't know what bilinear filtering is, it essentially takes two lines and creates an average of it. So if you had like a red line and a yellow line, if you're going to make the image bigger, it'll create orange. If you're shrinking it, it'll kind of create orange, because it just averages the two lines. So I go from having a very sharp 1440p local recording, but a really soft, not sharp at all 720p stream. And it doesn't actually look all that appealing at all. It just kind of looks really not great. So to bypass that, I had to use two OBSs. I did have a solution where you kind of like stream locally to your an RTMP that you host on the own computer. But the problem is if because you want to record in a constant in CRF mode, so that way you save bitrate on the less actiony parts, and the more harder parts it uses more bitrate. But if there's ever time a major spike in the bitrate, all of a sudden Windows will be like, oh my god, this is overloading the internet connection, and it'll just disconnect you, which we clearly cannot have on an online stream. It's already bad enough the hotel forces a reconnection every 24 hours. And another drawback, at least to this year's event, is we also have speakers. You can kind of see one over there. That is a Mackie Free Play. There's another one over there. And we had the game audio running through it, but obviously when people are kind of in the back, they can only hear the game audio. They can't, if there's a really soft-spoken runner, they can't hear anything. But in such a, like, this room looks large, mainly due to the fisheye as well, but it's really not. It's kind of small. I mean, there's only like 4 rows of chairs. So if you start pumping in like people speaking through the speakers as well, you've all of a sudden taken away your ability to kind of crank the microphones as much as you want, which would hinder the stream audio itself. It's very different when GDQ does their event, for example. They have staging and everything, where they have all the microphones and everything like that. And then way behind that, they have the speakers to the crowd. And that gives them enough of a cushion that they can do everything they need on that staging, and the audio can get pumped in their speakers, which will match the stream, and there won't be any kind of like feedback issues. But unfortunately, with just the situation here, it's not all that great. So that really isn't possible. So moving on to some of the challenges that we had with this event. Obviously, some people would have noticed them, because when things go wrong, you definitely notice them. But when things are going okay, you really don't. It's just kind of normal. So I actually asked a friend what they thought of the stream, and they were like, "Oh, you know, it looks fine." And I would hope for a greater response than fine, but that means that nothing's going wrong, which is good. If he said I'm noticing this, I don't like how that looks, then you know that something's wrong. But one of the challenges is, again, runners with very quiet voices. You have to crank the microphones quite a bit, and trying to get everything leveled properly, and get that working, because there's only so much that you can crank on the microphone. So if you're limited to how loud you can get the person with the headset on, and then if you can only crank it up to here, then your game audio can only be here, but the main stream is like this. So then you have to change the gain in OBS, and there's a lot of different gains, leveling of audio sources that happens. The Dreamcast, I dislike the Dreamcast after the issues with it, but honestly, Negularia brought a Toro box, and I think me and him just have come to the conclusion that the connectors are faulty. My cabling is also not the greatest. I have to actually redo connectors on it. But if I played around with it a bit, all of a sudden colors would appear, and quite literally the game was working and capturing. They only switched the disc, and it just died. It would refuse to capture. So we swapped to his S-Video cable and then fed it through the DVD recorder, and that's how we got Crazy Taxi 2 up and running. But that was something that now I'm going to be spending the next year looking into, is Dreamcast working, how to get that solid. The Atari capture was another problem. Because it wasn't AV modded, I didn't have the time to do that. We were going to use RF, and the plan was to do it like I do at home with my OG Famicom, and that's the RF to the DVD recorder, and then the DVD recorder does component out to the capture card and to the CRTs. At some point, I've swapped the DVD recorder from 480i to 480p, and I swear I had the remote in my box of stuff, and I didn't, so I was unable to swap it out from 480p. So I had to try to find the remote in home. I could not, but I brought a backup of the VCR, which I couldn't find the remote for, and of course it went from channel 125 to channel 21, just completely skipped over to lower channels. MVP Stump came in with a Samsung phone that has the IR blaster. After fiddling around with a universal remote app, we managed to flip the VCR into channel 3, but it was kind of a crazy daisy chain when you have an Atari going into a VCR, going into a DVD recorder, going into a capture card. It looked about as good as you expected. But yeah, going forward, an AV mod at bare minimum would have made that a lot better. Race audio. So I should probably not hit the desk with my knee as well. So with races, we come to the limitation that the mixer only has 4 outputs, let's say. 2 of them are pre-fader, which means that literally the signal that's coming in is the signal that's getting spit out. And 2 of them are post, meaning after you've adjusted them, their levels and everything like that, then it gets spit out. And literally all 4 are in use. The 2 pre are being used for the game-only audio capture, and the 2 posts are going to the runner with their headset, which is fine until you bring in a second runner, which needs their own game audio. So my solution was that we rented a headphone distribution amplifier where you can feed it 1 input and it spits it out to 6 different headphones. And it has a little aux input for them where you can patch stuff into it. Really should have read the manual more before I used it, but the solution kind of is that you put 1 game on the left, 1 game on the right. You mute the side that doesn't have the runner's audio, and you hit the mono switch, and they have their game in their headset. But then that becomes the stream doesn't have that option. They get both games then in both ears, which for Dark Souls worked out perfectly fine because the music in that game is very muted. There's not much dialogue going on. It just kind of worked out very nicely. And then we get Sonic Adventure 2, where we just have a cluster of sound effects and everything, and it just did not go well. And overall, people disliked the dual audio more than they liked it, and really the only reason it was happening was a limitation of the system. The solution that I kind of came up with it later on was I pulled an aux out from the little mixer for the second runner's audio, and I put it in that aux that the headphone amplifier has, distribution amplifier has, and that's how they got their audio while still being able to listen to everybody else. So that solution came later along, but it required a bit of playing around with the equipment on the fly and trying to figure things out in between setup blocks. So that was a challenge. And another challenge was the Ocarina of Time Runner. They actually play at home on an LCD TV, and there's many frame perfect tricks involved in that game. So when they play on a tube TV, because all of a sudden that display lag doesn't exist anymore, they're not able to pull off their tricks. So the runner needed essentially that their LCD to be able to play. And if for a smaller event this might not be a problem because you're capturing with composite or S-video or something, but since I'm trying to keep everything at the highest fidelity, which is component and RGB, kind of doesn't work because you can't feed 240p RGB to a LCD television because we don't use RGB. And 240p over component, most TVs will reject the signal. For whatever reason, it's only more modern TVs that are kind of slowly accepting it. Now, Gloria did bring the one OSSC that we have remaining, because I have yet to fix the one that I killed yet, because it's just unneeded in my setup if I can use the data path directly. But even if we use that, TVs generally have zero processing on the HDMI in comparison to their composite inputs, which is what the runner normally uses. So the solution was to give them essentially a black and white signal, because if a quick lesson for those who don't know is you have your composite, which is the yellow cable, where black and white and color are combined into one cable, and then that's why you get artifacting and it's kind of smeared and everything like that. As video separates the two, so you have your black and white on one signal and all the color on the other, which is why it looks a lot sharper, because all of a sudden the color is not bleeding into the black and white and the edges can be a lot sharper. And component, or RGB, component, it separates, it already has a separated black and white, and the color is separated into two channels, minus red and minus blue. So everything but red, everything but blue. And then it uses math to determine green, and that's how you get it. It uses also chroma subsampling, where it does maths and it kind of shrinks the color information in half to be able to pull things off. But the crux of it is that you have a cable with black and white, and if you feed that into the yellow input on a TV, it will detect it. You just only get black and white, and that's how the runner played. He was able to pull off his tricks. It's just that everything was in black and white for him playing on the TV, but he was able to actually pull off his run, and I believe it was under estimate as well, which is great. Every run is, but so yeah, that was a bit of a challenge there as well. So it's not just tube TVs all the time. You need the opposite can also happen as well, because everybody has different situations how they play, and you kind of want to accommodate everybody. Now, I did have some questions or comments that I did get from people earlier. So I have deinterlacing, which I kind of brought up. And like I said, if you're using like a Dazzle or something and you're capturing a retro console, you want to use the retro deinterlacing, where because what happens was, like, the capture card will take the 240p, it will double it to 480 but interlaced. But if you take away the blank lines and and shrink it back down, it's the same image. So it's a very easy conversion, and a lot of runners don't do that for some reason, or they'll use like a different form of deinterlacing, which kind of guesses what's in between, which is absolutely not the solution at all, and ends up to subpar quality of what otherwise could be pretty decent quality. Capture cards, like I explained, we use the data path cards, but honestly, one of the next things that I'm looking into is one of those quad HDMI capture cards. I probably won't do it for a while because they're fairly expensive, but having regular HDMI cards for like the cameras or quick HDMI sources would be pretty nice, because it avoids the dongles. It also opens up more inputs. So, for example, the data paths could be used strictly for analog, and the HDMIs could be for HDMIs. Maybe getting another data path E2S. It's just going to involve looking at stuff and trying to figure out what the best solution would be to get more out of it. Microphones. If you're looking for a personal stream, honestly, probably grabbing like the Snowball Ice, because there's no reason to get a regular Snowball. Grabbing the Snowball Ice, probably a decent thing if you can get them on sale for like maybe $20 or something, like they most of the time do. Otherwise, grabbing like this podium microphone's working pretty damn well. You can find something used, anything like that to kind of get you started. If you grab a regular microphone like this, though, obviously you're gonna have to invest in a mixer. And then your audio quality is kind of dependent on your mixer, and it has to have USB and everything. But for starting off, a Blue Snowball probably is ideal as like for a personal. If you're doing a marathon, well, you probably want some sort of solution with a mixer, and I would just go to your local music store and look into seeing what options they have available for rent, because that will probably be the most ideal. Switchers, splitters, and matrices. If you're looking into the easiest solution to split your video, I honestly recommend a VGA splitter. And you're probably like, oh, why a VGA splitter when I'm not going to be using VGA? The point is that it has 5 signals that it has to take and split off and keep them in the same quality, and that's your red, green, blue, horizontal, and vertical sync. And there are adapters where you can do composite in this video to VGA. Probably just sends them over the red, green, blue lines. Obviously, component can get fed through it, RGB. If you're going into RGB from your retro consoles, be it whatever cable you want, obviously it can handle that too. The way it works is the sync goes onto the horizontal or H line. So you can get those probably decently priced, maybe $20, probably $20 Canadian actually, maybe 25, 30, depends. The dollar's been kind of cruddy recently. But you can get that, buy a couple of adapters from Monoprice or something, and you have yourself a powered splitter, which will do you a lot better than trying to use like Y adapters and everything. And you'll be able to get longer runs as well. So that's kind of like my basic entry. If you're looking for like a marathon, the Crosspoint is definitely a good purchase. You can get them decently used, like for a decent price. The only thing is that you need to buy the BNC to RCA adapters generally if you're feeding, because they can take anything. You can feed, if I wanted to, if I was a smaller marathon, I could buy like a Crosspoint 42, for example, so 4 inputs, 2 outputs, and it has RGB on each of them. But if I'm just doing a composite in this video, all of a sudden I have 3 composites on each one of those inputs. So now all of a sudden I have 12 composite inputs that I can take as an input, and 6 composite outputs that I can do. The Phoenix connectors, they're not that expensive. They're like $1.50 on DigiKey, and they're just 3 wires. So a little bit of DIY work, but you save yourself a lot of money, and then you'll have you can have RCA audio, you can have a headphone audio jack out. It really depends on what you just want to do with those. So if it's a marathon setting, I definitely recommend with those. They're workhorses. They've been in use forever, and they probably are not going to die. A lot of places are getting rid of them because everybody's going digital, so it is now still a good time to grab them. And we have 10 questions. All right, give me the first question.
Let's see. Some are quicker than others. Yeah, some are quicker than others. So, Agent or Bill, how long do you think you're going to keep this somewhat well-oiled machine working?
As long as I possibly can.
I don't know if they hear me, by the way, so you know what we're doing.
Yeah, so the question was, how long do I think I will keep this well-oiled machine going? First off, I very much appreciate that you think this is a well-oiled machine. That means I've been doing something right, which very happy about. Honestly, as long as it possibly can go. I would like to think that I'm very passionate in this. I'm constantly, like I said, I'm constantly looking into improving and figuring out solutions for video capture. I'm talking all the times with people like Enol, Planks, Oasis, Muff, Extremes, just other people in ESA's tech. Like, I'm always talking with people about capture solutions and bouncing ideas back and forth. So I'm trying to learn as much as I possibly can and trying to share as much as I possibly can, as much as I can do. So I thoroughly enjoy this. If I didn't enjoy this, I wouldn't spend most of my day this week. I wouldn't spend like 75% of this week in the stream room doing all this if I didn't enjoy it. So I'd like to do that as long as I possibly can do.
The next question, how many years do you think that your ingenuity will be replaced by plebs?
How many years? I give it minimum a decade. It's retro capture is still the problem with retro capture is you have so much misinformation on forums and everything where people think one thing and they spread that as if it was gospel, and then it turns out that they're completely wrong and nobody's been correcting them for years. That's another thing that I'm trying to resolve as well. I'm looking into getting a wiki made now that NASA's complete and Mystery Puzzle Challenge is complete and all that stuff. I can start to kind of devote my time into doing that, which is one of the ways that I want to also try to share knowledge. So, yeah, I give it 10 years minimum.
How can I be a commentator in a small con like NASA? Or
The SAS.
yeah, in the SAS?
You register and show up.
You gotta repeat the question.
So the question was, how can you be a commentator in an event like NASA? NSAS. Literally just show up. I mean, we had no restrictions on people appearing here. It was pay the registration, show up, get your badge, and you're good to go. There was no restrictions, just show up.
Okay, next one from Counselor Bear. Why not just get an SD capture card?
Why not just get an SD capture card? That is a very good question. And it's honestly just the fact that, at least personally, when I'm looking into buying equipment, I look into how much use I will get out of it. So I do like a value for usage kind of equation in my head. And I also look into how long I will be using this piece of equipment. So when I have the choice of buying a Dazzle, which I mean, or not a Dazzle, Dazzle's crap. Don't buy a new Dazzle. Maybe if somebody gives one to you for free or you buy it for like $5 or $10, use it. But I think GVUSB is the go-to card nowadays for SD card capture. You're limited to composite in this video, but standard definition also includes RGB and component, and now all of a sudden you can't capture those. While there's a dude on eBay who I honestly don't know how he gets his stock. He's been selling like bucket loads of DataPath E1 cards, which you don't need anything more. There's people who he has the E1S card for I think like $50 more. You really don't need it. You can grab the E1. I think he's been accepting offers for like 60 or 70 USD. If you're looking for SD capture, you really don't need anything more. Like I said, you get OSSC capture quality out of it without needing an OSSC. If you play on a tube TV, why would you invest in that when you can just get the capture card and do it? There's a lot of work involved, mind you, because you have to fine-tune everything and everything like that. But yeah, I feel personally that you get more worth out of getting equipment that can do more than just capture composite in this video. So.
Next question, more of a joke one. Are you single, QT?
Am I single, cutie? Yes, I am. Hit me up.
Okay. Next question, another quick, fast one. Where's Cockbot?
Cockbot was being an idiot, so the person who owns it shut it off because we banned the account because it was being an idiot.
Okay, sounds good. Next one, from Furry Dipper. Do you have an idea as to why the video input was sometimes being dropped on both the runner and screener sides, especially during God Hand? It could also happen at the start of SML.
So that is a very good question.
You'll probably need to repeat it quickly.
The question is, why was the input dropping during games like God Hand? And honestly, I think that just has to do with the HDMI. It is kind of a longer HDMI run, but also if there's any change, like if there's a bright screen or a dark screen or anything like that, any kind of like drastic changes, it just kind of cause the video to drop. Honestly, with HDMI, we're kind of I kind of stretched the limits of what I can reasonably do here. It's like a 25-foot HDMI cord. Kind of degrades the signal already. You can get 40 or 50 feet out of an HDMI cord, but at that point the cord is like the thickness of like a literal garden hose. So I did, there are HDMI kits, extender kits that let you extend over Cat6a cabling, and that is probably what one should look into if you have to do longer runs. But in a situation like this where our tech table is on L point, there's no reason to do that. You might as well just grab like the 25-foot HDMI cable, and there will be times where the signal might just drop. In that case, One thing I'm going to be looking into is HDMI kind of signal. They kind of just like buffer this, not really buffer the signal, but they kind of normalize it so it can keep a longer length, kind of like an active extender type deal. I just need to look into that to kind of keep things going.
I think the next one's a quick question I should probably answer. It's about if somebody cancels, like what's the process of redoing the schedule?
What's the process for when a streamer either cancels and or is unable to run? Notice some impromptu runs, but they're still enjoyable. So I figured.
I just quickly answer that.
Yeah, I'll let those crazy guys answer it since he deals with that.
I'll just sit down. So yeah, so basically the question about what happens if a streamer or a person cancels, if a person cancels last minute, what do we kind of do with like redoing the schedule and stuff? So we had a few runners that dropped last minute or kind of weren't available throughout the week, and we had to quickly replace them, or we had some setup blocks that we needed to fill. Normally the way we do is we might look at people who have already submitted and had certain runs rejected and throw them in. Otherwise, we might just quickly ask who's around. Does somebody have a run to fill? So these are one of the times where maybe if you show up to an event like this and you have a run that either wasn't accepted or you didn't think of submitting, where during setup time blocks or things like that, where we're looking for runners, we might be able to quickly fill somebody in. Most of the time it was just PC runs because that's what we already had set up, and due to, as we've already explained, I wasn't exactly a know-all for tech, so we couldn't set up a lot of these other consoles. But it's just a matter of, you kind of have to act on the fly when people cancel, knowing what you have available around you to fill, and then just finding something that you can throw in there. So yeah. Okay, take it back. Next question.
All right. Next
Just a couple
question
more.
from
So we'll quickly speed them.
Tartuso. What's the? Nope, that was the question.
I'll just look at this. Can you choose different downscale filters in OBS Studio? That was a
So you can, but not in the way that you think. So normally, if you go to the video tab in OBS Studio, it gives you the ability to downscale, and it lets you pick a filter by either bilinear, which is at averaging, or bicubic or Lanczos, which I can't really describe properly, so I'm not going to bother. Lanczos being probably the best choice out of all three. And the problem is that if your canvas is, let's say, set 1080, and you're trying to stream in 720, and you do that option in the video tab, if you record, it's recording in 720p, because the way that the chain in OBS works is you have your canvas, then you put your stuff on your canvas, then the video tab, if it's scaling, will scale that with the graphics card using the selected filter, and then it feeds it into the encoder to either a file or a stream. So if it's already downscaled before you're even getting to the streaming or recording part, then you kind of can't get that higher quality video, which is why the dual OBS or the local server kind of solution is the way. Honestly, the easiest solution I can think of to this problem is just, it's still a dual OBS, but it's getting a monitor that is in the higher resolution that you want to record in, so be that 1080 or 1440p or 4K. In my case, it could even be like that dummy thing, as long as there's a monitor that you can full screen project to and then just like window record it all the time. That will be pretty easy.
So we just have two more. We can just rapid fire these.
One quick and one long.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're quick. The first question: FrameMeister versus OSSC for retro games.
It's a tough question, because the FrameMeister is. Here's the thing: the FrameMeister, while being more expensive, because the question is FrameMeister or OSSC. The FrameMeister, while being more expensive, it is also very much a plug-and-play solution. You hook up your game console to it via any of the inputs, composite, S-video, component, RGB. And it upscales it very nicely. You don't have to... You can fine-tune things. There are profiles online that you can use to get things even nicer looking. But it's very much a plug-and-play. If your capture card supports it, it does. There's no issues with it. Most capture cards will, because it actually, standard HDMI kind of coming out of it and everything like that. That's why it has the minimal lag, but it still exists there from the source to the HDMI output. The OSSC, on the other hand, it's literally what comes in, what comes out. And oftentimes you'll see on Twitter, people use a Super Nintendo or a NES, more often a Super Nintendo since that's the more popular console, with an OSSC. And they're like, I can't capture this, it doesn't work. Well, yeah, because the Super Nintendo doesn't have a standard video signal. It's actually 60.10 hertz, which a lot of capture cards, when they're looking at HDMI, they're going, I'm looking for 60 hertz. If it's anything above or below that, I don't understand that. Get that out of my face. So the OSSC is very much tweaking and stuff. I mean, there are some capture cards that can handle some of the video modes. I think like the Magewell internal cards can handle 4 times mode because it treats it as DVI instead of HDMI. I think the Elgato Camlink can handle the 5 times mode of the OSSC, but it's not very user plug and play friendly. So what you pay extra for in the FrameMeister saves you time and effort on the recording kind of side. So it really depends on what you want to do. If you're going, like, people are like, oh, I'm going to get the data path because it works with the OSSC. And then they play on a tube TV and they literally wasted $200 when the data path could have captured it directly. Mind you, we might be bringing the OSSC back into our capture chain for next NASA due to the fact that PS1 games can kind of be really funky and go up to 512 pixels wide. And sometimes the data path cards do not like doing that. They just see kind of 320. I know I'm over. Jeez. I'm chewing into the setup block here. And oh, well, that's wonderful. But yeah, it's wasting money if you're going to buy a data path to get your OSSC capture working when you can just skip the OSSC at that point and just capture it directly with the data path. If you're doing it all, the difference is when you're doing it all at home, you can have things nice and pre-set up. In a marathon, when you have to switch things on the fly, you can't, even though you can save presets and everything like that, you still need to keep things simple for everybody else. That was kind of one of the things this year. I have a folder of presets for different consoles, but the input sometimes has to be manually edited in the file with a text editor, or apparently they just didn't even notice the folder on the desktop, or I might have not mentioned it. Like, you need to dummy-proof things in a marathon setting. At a home setting, it's pick your poison. You want to use more money or you want to use up more time and effort. So, next question.
Okay, last question from Yander. You mentioned 1440p VODs. Does the recording of these videos significantly tax the RAM at any point, or does the PCI SSD do most of the work? I'd like to know more about how you handle files of that quality.
So, they're actually being recorded on a regular Western Digital 4 terabyte RED. No SSD needed. RAM usage is actually fairly light. Recording 1440p is actually still fairly light, at least for modern computers. If you can record 1080p, you can maybe record 1440p. The thing is, with at least with NASA, our stream is at like the medium CPU preset to kind of squeeze that extra quality out. While if you're doing a local recording and you're going for a CRF where it's trying to aim for a certain quality, you can lower the CPU preset. And the only thing that kind of changes really is the amount of bitrate that it's going to throw at it to reach that quality level. So, I mean, it is taxing, but not as taxing as you'd think. Another thing is that if you have an NVIDIA graphics card from the latest generation, so 1050 Ti, 60, 70, 80, Pascal generation, you can NVIDIA has the ability to lossless record in 264. So you don't even have to worry about your CPU taxing at that point. If you're recording in lossless quality from the graphics card, yeah, you might be using a lot more hard drive space, but you're also getting a lossless recording. So if the hard drive space is more important than anything, you don't really necessarily need an SSD or anything like that, at least from what I'm seeing here. So
There was one more question. I don't know if you want to answer that now or if you want to just answer it in chat.
I can answer now because it's the newest one, right? Let's see. I really wanted to record a game with OBS in 4K, but the output came out all laggy at around 7 FPS, which made me think my PC can't handle the process. So I tried to downscale while I recorded into 1080, but the terrible OBS downscale creates a terribly blurry image. Would the simplest solution with a simple solution to simply give up on 4K recording. So that's exactly what I was describing earlier, where the downscaled recording is blurrier than what you originally intended. And I wouldn't necessarily give up on 4K, but like getting a graphics card, even though it might be pricier, would definitely help out, because it's the Pascal generation of graphics cards can actually record in 4K 60 FPS and actually H.265 encoding. I believe they can actually do 8K in 264 encoding. So if your CPU can't handle 4K, even though my new rig is fairly beastly, it kind of still can choke a bit on 4K encoding over the CPU. So that's why I actually grabbed the 1050 to be able to GPU kind of record. But that has its own limitations in OBS as well, where you can't do multi-track when you do the custom output to get stuff going on there in the 265. But yeah, 4K over CPU is definitely very hard to pull off. You realistically probably won't be able to do it unless you invest in the newest Intel i9 or AMD Threadripper series of CPUs. So the cheaper solution is to just get an NVIDIA card. I'm not too sure about the AMD cards. I believe the newest generation can maybe do 4K 60, but you honestly need Vega to be able to pull that off. The 4 and 500 series of AMD cards are kind of lackluster in their 4K encoding. They can't really pull off as much as the NVIDIA. So if you're looking for encoding, even buying a cheap Quadro, that is of the newest. NVIDIA has a table. You can look it up, see which ones do 4K, and just kind of do that. Because yeah, OBS limitations suck, and I'll probably be doing a forum post about it to see what can be done. But I think that's it. If you have any further questions or anything like that, highly recommend joining the NASA Discord, which should be nasamarathon.com/Discord. Definitely hit us up. We have the Tech Lounge channel. Any questions, ask them there. I'll do my best to answer. If you don't really do Discord, you can hit up NASA Marathon on Twitter, hit myself up on Twitter. It's just Dark-Aries Night. But yeah, I'm definitely willing to help and to share knowledge as best as I can. So yeah, I hope that everybody watching found this panel entertaining, or at least you learned something. And hopefully I can do another one of these tech panels next year if everybody found this interesting and worthwhile. So thank you.